They thought I was old. They thought I was forgetful. They thought I would stay silent forever. They were wrong. This is the day I found my voice. It was a gray afternoon. The soft ding of the microwave echoed through the kitchen. No one answered. No one ever did. It was a gray afternoon. The soft ding of the microwave echoed through the kitchen. No one answered. No one ever did. From down the hall, I could hear the muffled laughter of my granddaughter. And the polished voice of my daughter-in-law. Their world felt like a closed circle. One I was no longer invited into. I sat by the window, watching the steam curl and fade from my teacup. As though even it was giving up too soon. They say old people repeat themselves. Maybe that's true, but when my granddaughter giggled, "Grandma's telling that same story again." And my daughter-in-law added, "She always does, doesn't she?" Something in me froze. I smiled, of course. I always smile. That's what you do when you're invisible. But inside I felt the floor slip away. The notebook. At night, when the house grew quiet, I sat at the kitchen table with a small notebook. I wrote down everything. Who said what? Which meals were ignored? Even the exact words they used when they thought I wasn't listening. Those pages became my proof. Proof that I still existed inside this house. Once, I found an old Mother's Day card my son had made. The crayon letters said, "Mom, your cooking is the best. Thank you for taking care of me." That crooked little message still held more warmth than any words I'd heard in years. But from the hallway I heard whispers. "She's forgetting things more and more lately. Maybe it's time to put her in a home." A home? As if this house, the one my husband and I paid for, the one I scrubbed and mended for decades, was not already my home. The plot. The whispers grew bolder. One afternoon, folding laundry, I heard it. "It would be easier if she just signed the papers. She doesn't even understand what's going on anymore. Just put them in front of her." They thought I didn't hear. They thought I didn't understand. But I heard every word. And I understood perfectly. That night, I wrote again. Not just memories this time but evidence. Dates. Times. Their exact words. Every slight, every insult, every attempt to erase me. My notebook became my weapon. The attorney. The next week, I slipped into town. The brass plate read, "Anderson and Clark, attorneys at law." I sat across from Mr. Clark, an elder law attorney with kind eyes. "These," I said, placing my notebook on his desk, "are my records." "And this?" I showed him the deed. "This house is still under my name." He nodded slowly. "You've been thorough, Mrs. Whitmore. Very thorough. They can't take this from you." For the first time in years, I felt strength rising in my chest. And I smiled, not the polite kind I wore at the table, but a sharper one, the kind that said, "I am not finished yet." The showdown. The day came quietly. I asked them all to sit. My son clutched his phone. My granddaughter sighed loudly. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms, that tight smile on her face. "What is this about, Mom?" my son asked. I placed a clear folder on the table. My hands did not shake. "This house," I said softly, "still belongs to me." They laughed nervously. "Of course, Mom, but..." I slid the deed across the table. "It has never been transferred. You tried to make me sign. But I didn't." My son's face went pale. "And here?" I lifted my notebook. Pages fluttered like wings. Every insult. Every whisper about putting me away. Every plan to trick me. Dates. Times. Words. Written down. Every one. The room fell silent. At that moment, a knock at the door. Mr. Clark entered, briefcase in hand. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said warmly. "Shall we begin?" The shock on their faces was almost comical. My granddaughter's phone slipped from her hands. My daughter-in-law jumped to her feet. "You can't do this," she shouted. I met her eyes. I just did. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. A new beginning. That evening, I turned the key to my new cottage. The rent was in my name. The keys were mine. When the door closed behind me, it didn't sound like loss. It sounded like freedom. I brewed tea, set it on the table, and whispered to myself, "Thank you," because I no longer needed anyone else's words. Finding my voice. In the days that followed, I filled my home with flowers. Cooked meals exactly how I liked them. And most importantly, I wrote. Not just evidence, but stories. The very stories they mocked me for repeating. One afternoon, I was invited to read at the library. I carried my notebook, stood before a circle of children, and read aloud. They laughed. They gasped. They clapped. Their eyes shone with curiosity. Their voices rose with excitement. For the first time, my stories were not only heard, they were wanted. Closing. I know now that silence is not always virtue. I stayed quiet because I believed love would speak for me. But love, when left unchecked, can turn into convenience for others. So I speak. I write. I leave a record. And though my family may never understand, I have found others who do. Neighbors who greet me warmly at the market. Children who beg, "Tell us another story, Grandma." An attorney who looked me in the eye and said, "You did the right thing." I am no longer invisible. To anyone who has ever felt overlooked, unheard, dismissed, staying silent doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes it means you were waiting. For the right moment, for the right courage, for the right voice. I waited long enough. And when the time came, I did not whisper. I spoke. And my life, at last, is mine again.